Yeah, well, so at what point did you decide to start a record label as well?
So that comes quite early in it all. So when I was studying, so we had like music industry modules and stuff when I was doing my production degree. I just got really into learning about how the labels ran and stuff, and I've always had my attitude to music was always that I wanted it to be a sustainable career. I was never like, apart from when I was a teenager, I was never really like, I'm gonna pursue like the one big thing, like really making it in a band, or really, like the all or nothing type things. I was always in it for, I'm gonna make my living out of it, because I know my whole family work in the music industry, so I knew that being like a career musician was like a possible thing to do, and not because people always like, oh, do you work with famous people? Well, I know your name. It's like there's thousands of people that are making a living out of this that aren't.
Because that's the most important part of it.
Exactly, that's it. So I was always aiming for like, what could I do to make myself have a sustainable career
and be happy doing it.
Exactly. So the label was really a vehicle early on, because I didn't have funding to open my own studio when I first started or anything along those lines. So the label was like a vehicle for me to start working with people I thought would be successful.
What was the idea behind it?
The idea was that I could make them records without being paid for it myself, but also like not upfront, them not paying me as a producer, which gave me the opportunity to put together like a portfolio of my work.
But what scope did you have to do that at the time?
Not very much.
Another yes situation.
The will, thinking it might be possible. Those things essentially.
Oh, that's funny.
Yeah, that was about it. I mean, it kind of started because my dad had this idea that So I work almost solely in British folk music, pretty niche market. We should get that out there straight away. And I come from a family of folk musicians, and my dad had this idea while I was studying I don't even know where to start with half of this stuff. So my dad's a Morris dancer, and as part of that, he knew a guy it must have been in his 80s by this point, who sang Cumbrian dialect songs. Which is a bit of a misnomer, because Cumbrian dialect isn't really a thing, because we're a new county. So really it was a mixture of Westmoreland and Cumberland dialect songs, essentially. And probably one of the only people left alive at the time singing Cumbrian dialect songs in dialect as a Cumbrian, as you'd expect to hear them, unaccompanied. And my dad had this idea that was a heritage thing that should be preserved. And I was doing my degree and I had some equipment. And he said, basically, why don't you record Bruce, the guy's name, singing these songs? So we did. And we set about doing that in Bruce's garage. And we kind of started doing it. And then my dad started like scoring some of them so he could make a book to go with it so other people could learn them, etc. And then we just kind of went, well, what would be the vehicle for releasing this? At a time when I think...
When was this?
2009, 2008, 2009. So I would say self-releasing wasn't really big, but it was just starting to be a thing that people were thinking about. So I kind of was already learning at uni the things you need to put in place to register yourself as a label, what kind of codes you needed, how to set yourself up with MCPS, PPL, all of those kinds of things. So I just started putting that into practice, essentially, to be able to do that. And once I'd done that, and we'd had that out there, I was like, well, I'm a label now. So this would also be a good way for me to approach other people who might not have the wherewithal yet to self-release, might not have the funds themselves to record a really decent record.
Did you have the facilities to record people then?
I just did I had equipment, but not a space. So I had mics.
So could you go to them?
I'd go to them, or they'd come to me, or I'd hire a studio, or or I'd hire some mics in and that kind of thing, and we'd kind of build it together. So I put money into it at that stage, but we're not talking like tens of thousands of pounds that you would if you were, doing it something a bit more commercial. We're talking hundreds to, a couple of thousand at the end of it all.
Yeah.
I mean, you've self-released stuff, haven't you? You've kind of done it.
Yeah.
You've kind of, so, it's not it's not that much money at those early stages. So I put in that, but only from like with a little bit of help from my dad, but not tons, and just on whatever wages I was earning at the time. And then I made that back through sales. So I just struck a deal with whoever it was that we'd split the sales so that I could make back what I'd put into it, essentially.
So you would split sales right from day one? You wouldn't get your costs back first and then split a profit after that? Or is that an option?
Well, I've made a lot of mistakes. Is the honest
Haven't we all?
Is the honest answer. I had really great visions of being a label for the artists, so I split from day one before I'd made money back. But retrospectively, then I never made my money back on some of them.
Yeah,
so
especially in the early days, I would imagine.
Exactly. So as things have grown, things have changed a little. Like it's not the same model that I use now, but it's how I mean, I lost some money. Like I'm not gonna lie, I lost a few £1,000s, but not like mega money.
The main cost for us was the actual recording.
Yeah.
Obviously, we went to a professional studio and just...
So that was the bit that I
cost a
tried
bit
to
of
give
money.
people. That's the bit that I gave them.
Yeah.
Was really what I was interested in was being able to put records out there that were good, that then people would hear that I produced. Essentially, that's what I was doing it for originally. And it did work. Like, eventually, what my hope was, eventually then some people would come to me.
Well, once you've done a few releases, you get word
Exactly.
of mouth, and
And it did. And it did
put
work.
stuff online to say this is what we've done.
Exactly, and it did start to work. So more people come to me now that I don't necessarily release on the label just to hire me as a producer.
So
And now
you become
obviously
a bit
we've got
more
this
well
place.
known in the folk
Exactly.
scene.
And then it had other effects, like it started to get me like live work and stuff as well, live engineering work.
Yeah,
and that kind of thing.
you do. You go with a few different bands to places. I've noticed.
I work with two or three acts like permanently, and then do various other.
Oh, before I forget,
things.
what is the name of your record label?
Oh, it's Haystack Records.
Yeah, and how did you come up with the name?
I don't know, actually. It just kind of arrived, I think. I was looking for something that was obviously in keeping with the genre. So I was looking for something that sounded a bit folky.
Like a needle in a haystack.
And then that was the other thing. That was the clincher, was the idea of, like, I was out there looking for young artists that weren't a big thing yet. So I just felt like I was looking for a needle in a haystack. That was the kind of...
It works.
That's where it came from, essentially.